Good morning. My name is Brinda, working as Assistant Professor at Sri Balaji College of Nursing. Today I'm going to deal with pediatric nursing and my topic is meconium aspiration syndrome. And let's first see about meconium aspiration syndrome introduction.
See with the introduction of meconium. Meconium is a thick, pasty, greenish black substance that is present in the fetal bowel, which is the first passed stool of the newborn. The first passed stool by the newborn. The meconium is typically passed in 24 or after 42 or 48 hours. Within 48 hours, the child and the newborn may pass the meconium. So first passed stool, they call it as meconium. Sometimes the fetus passes the meconium while still in the womb. That's why we call it as meconium aspiration syndrome. So it is a risk when the new fetus passes the meconium in the uterus. Meconium consists of bile, intestinal secretion, amniotic fluid, lanugo, and mucus. Next, we'll go on with epidemiology. Meconium, that is MSAF, is meconium stained amniotic fluid. Meconium stained amniotic fluid observed in approximately 8 to 25% of all live births. So meconium aspiration occurs in approximately 5 to 35% of newborn delivered through meconium stained amniotic fluid. So it is not necessary that meconium aspiration syndrome is common in and always seen in meconium stained amniotic fluid. If the amniotic fluid is stained by meconium, it is not necessary the child or the neonate may aspirate the meconium. 50% of them require mechanical ventilation. Incidence of meconium aspiration meconium stained amniotic fluid is more in term or post-term babies. It is not very common among the preterm babies because it is usually occurs after 38 weeks of gestation, rare before 38 weeks of gestation. So next we'll go on with a risk factor for MAS, meconium aspiration syndrome. It is a group of syndromes, so we call it as symptoms, we call it as syndrome. Preeclampsia or eclampsia. Preeclampsia is a condition where the blood pressure is usually shooted up after 20 weeks of gestation. And eclampsia is a severe condition which causes seizure from eclampsia. That is, because of the complication of preeclampsia, seizures may occur. Oligohydramnias is a reduced amount of amniotic fluid in uterus. Maternal hypertension. So when there is a maternal hypertension, there is a placental insufficiency, there is a constriction of blood vessels, and there is no proper supply, there is less oxygen supplies during the placental circulation, and the baby may get for stress. Maternal chronic respiratory or cardiovascular disease. So when the mother is having any cardiovascular disease or respiratory condition, there are chances the child may have insufficiency or go for stress and get past meconium. IUGR. IUGR is intrauterine growth retardation, abnormal fetal heart rate pattern. It is abnormal fetal heart rate pattern into the intrapartum delivery during the intrapartum period. During the course of contractions, sometimes many babies may go in for, the fetus may go in for fetal stress, and there is abnormal fetal heart rate pattern. What are the components of meconium? What are the components of meconium? What are the meconium consist of? It's how it looks like. Meconium is sterile, viscous, dark green, odorless materials, starts accumulating in fetal intestine in the 3rd month of gestation. From 3rd month, it goes secreting. Components consist of 72 to 80%, it consists of water. Desquamated cells from the intestinal and epithelial cells. Lanugo hair. Lanugo is a fine hair which is seen on the fetal body, and it may get shedded in the womb. Next is fatty material from Vernix gaseosa. Vernix gaseosa is a thick, cheesy white substance, fatty material that is seen in the newborn, covered the newborn body. Next is amniotic fluid. Next, bile and drug metabolites. Next, we'll go with physiology of meconium stained amniotic fluid. How it is getting stained, why the baby is passing meconium. We'll see the physiology. Meconium first found in the fetal ileum between the 10th to 16th week of gestation. During the 10th and 16th week, the meconium start to secrete in the intestine, that is the fetal ileum. Meconium passing in utero is uncommon before the 38 weeks of gestation. So as I told, it is very uncommon in preterm baby. It is very common in the term baby because the lack of during the preterm period, that is before 38 weeks of gestation, there is a lack of strong peristaltic movement in the ileum, that is in the intestine, that is low motility level. Tonic contraction of anal splinter. There is a good contraction of the anal splinter. A gap of viscous meconium in the rectum. It occurs 30% beyond and 42 weeks due to. So because why it is very common in post-term babies. So the reason is post-term fetal maturation. The baby is matured enough to get delivered. So there will be high motility and everything has been matured. There is a high motility level. Vagal stimulation by cord, head compression in the absence of fetal distress. Next one is vagal stimulation by cord or head compression in the absence of fetal distress. So what are the pathogenesis of meconium stained amniotic fluid? What are the reasons that is amniotic fluid is stained by the meconium? Hyperperistalsis. There is increased, as I told, there is increased levels of peristaltic movement. Relaxation of anal splinter. So anal splinter is unable to hold the meconium. It is relaxed. In utero stress, that is hypoxia, decreased level of blood in the decreased level of oxygen in the blood, that is hypoxia because of the fetal stress, and producing relaxation of anal splinter. When the baby becomes stressed, the baby passes out the meconium. Perinatal asphyxia, intestinal ischemia, diving reflex, acidosis, gasping respiration. Gasping respiration is again maybe the cord around the neck. The baby is gasping for respiration. There is insufficient. The baby have insufficient in the oxygen supply through the placenta, and the baby gasp for respiration. So next we go on with pathophysiology. How it's like meconium is being stained in the amniotic fluid, and how baby is getting aspirated, and what are the what are the causes, and what it leads to. So physiological meconium passage, that is physiologically the baby may pass due to postdated. Postdated is a large baby after the postterm, that is after 42 weeks of gestation, the baby passes the meconium. Next is fetal compromise. Fetal compromise is a fetus undergo stress. When the baby is in the stress, the baby doesn't have, due to decreased level of oxygen in the blood, or due to the cord around the neck, or the baby is having insufficient oxygen supply, and there is a chance of passing meconium. So due to this, the amniotic fluid is stained with meconium, that is, which leads to meconium stained amniotic fluid, and which leads umbilical cord spasm. So after the meconium is stained by amniotic fluid, the postpartum aspiration. So as I told earlier, it is not necessary all the baby whose meconium is being passed in the amniotic fluid need to be aspirated. It depends on the condition. So postpartum aspiration, in utero gasping, which leads to meconium aspiration. So this is which further leads to, number one, peripheral airway obstruction, proximal airway obstruction, cytokine activation, and surfactant inactivation of the surfactant. So peripheral airway obstruction, it may be complete or it may be partial. So complete obstruction is the meconium goes into the airway. It is getting into the from the upper airway into the lower air tract in the larger airway. The meconium is blocking the alveoli air function. So there is a complete obstruction or partial obstruction, which leads to atelectasis, that is complete or partial collapse of the alveoli. Next, it leads to ventilation perfusion mismatch. So during the inspiration, oxygen gets in, but during expiration, the carbon dioxide doesn't go out. There is a ventilation perfusion mismatch. So partial and ball valve effect, air trapping and air, which leads to air track. So partial obstruction, as I told, during inspiration, the air gets in through the where the meconium is obstructed in the walls of the alveoli. Still there is an airway passage. During expiration, the full air doesn't pass out through the carbon dioxide, doesn't pass out during the expiration. So there is air trapping is there inside the alveoli, and there was a air leak, and further which leads to pneumonia. Next is cytokine activation. Cytokine activation, because of the components of the meconium, there is a cytokine activation at the inside the lung, which further leads to pneumonitis. And these conditions, proximal airway obstruction and pneumonitis, further leads to acidosis, hypoxemia, and hypercapnia, increased level of carbon dioxide inside the blood. And what is inactivation of surfactant? Surfactant is a major function which keeps the surface tension and protects the lung and prevents the lung from inflammation. So because of this components of meconium, as I told, it contains biles and all these Lanugo and especially the byproducts. It inactivates the surfactant, and it leads to decreased lung compliance. And further, which leads to vasoactive mediators, that is meconium aspiration leads to vasoactive mediators. And remodeling of pulmonary vasodilator, that is muscular hyperplasia. These are conditions which finally leads to persistent pulmonary hypertension, PPHN. It's a very serious condition in newborn where persistent pulmonary hypertension we'll see in detail. So this is a mechanical obstruction of airway. So thick viscous meconium leads to complete or partial airway obstruction with onset of respiration. So when there is a respiration, meconium migrates from central to peripheral airway. That's why when we go into detail into the management, we'll know why you don't give vigorous and non-vigorous babies, and why you don't stimulate the non-vigorous babies immediately before suctioning, because there is a chance of meconium migrating from the central to peripheral airway, which leads to complete obstruction, that is atelectasis, the complete or partial obstruction, collapse of the lung. And partial obstruction, that is one is complete obstruction when it is completely obstructed. When there is completely obstruction, it causes atelectasis, that is a collapse of the alveoli. And when it's partially obstructed, Ball valve effect, I told, when it is partially affected, the air enters into the alveoli, okay, and it doesn't when during the expiration the air doesn't let out. So there is an air trapping, and it is hyperinflated, and a risk of pneumothorax, and air trapping and air leakage will be there. Next is chemical pneumonitis. So distal progressing of meconium, chemical pneumonitis, edema, and narrowing of the small airway. Because of the chemical pneumonitis, it causes inflammation of the alveoli airway, and it causes narrowing of the small airway. Next, it leads to surfactant inactivation. So what is the role of the surfactant? We'll deal with later. bilirubin, fatty acid, triglycerin, cholesterol, content of meconium inhibit the surfactant function and inactivation. So pulmonary hypertension. Meconium in lung stimulates pro-inflammatory cytokinase and vasoactive substance which cause pulmonary vasoconstriction. Hypoxia and acidosis hyperinflation which further leads to pulmonary hypertension. So surfactant inactivation and pulmonary hypertension we'll see in detail. So surfactant inactivation. So as I told, surfactant inactivation. Surfactant is synthesized by type 2 alveoli cells and it is made of complex of phospholipid proteins and saccharides. It functions to lower the surface tension. So it is the lung function, allows the expansion during inspiration and stabilize the alveoli at the end of expiration. So this function is what the meconium is being inhibited by the meconium. Surfactants actions are inhibited by the meconium to prevent alveolar collapse and prevent lung edema. So, surfactant also contribute to the lung protection. It acts as a defense mechanism. It also has an anti-inflammatory agent. Surfactant enhance the removal of inhaled particles and sensitine cells away from the alveoli structure. The extent of surfactant inhibit depends on both the concentration of surfactant and meconium. So when the meconium is in a larger concentration, the surfactant become inactive. When it is in meconium is in smaller concentration, the surfactant activation will not be much inhibited. There is a lesser chance. So if the surfactant concentration is low, even very highly diluted meconium can inhibit the surfactant function. Whereas in high surfactant concentration, the effect of meconium are limited. So it depends upon the level of surfactant concentration. So one of the treatment regime is also a surfactant, you're giving a treatment of surfactant artificially. You are installing the surfactant into the lungs. Meconium impact the surfactant mechanism by preventing surfactant from preventing overall alveolar surface and decreasing the concentration of surfactant proteins, that is SPA and SPA-B, by changing the viscosity and structure of the surfactant. So the meconium has so much power that it changes because of the chemical, that is mainly because of the bile ducts and all the components, it changes the structure of the surfactant. Several morphological changes occur after meconium exposure. The most notable being detached of the airway epithelium from the stroma and the shedding of epithelial cells into the airway. These indicate a direct determinantal effect on the lung alveolar cells because of the introduction of meconium into the lungs. So the meconium is causing so much of damage into the lungs and it causes inactivation of the surfactant and changes the structure of the surfactant. Next, we go deal with what is persistent pulmonary hypertension, that is PPHN. So PPHN is a failure of fetal circulation to adapt to the extrauterine condition after birth. So when there is no proper airway, circulation begins after the baby delivers, that is respiration doesn't occur, there is a total failure in the fetal circulation. So it is a failure of fetal circulation to adapt to the extrauterine condition after birth. PPHN is associated with various respiratory diseases, including meconium aspiration syndrome. As 50 to 20% of the infant with meconium aspiration syndrome develop PPHN. So, but also the pneumonia and sepsis. A combination of hypoxia, pulmonary vasoconstriction, and ventilation perfusion mismatch can trigger PPHN. So immediately after a newborn is delivered, the baby has to cry immediately after birth. So when this is stopped, when this doesn't occur, when there is a in most of the cases like vasoconstriction, it may be due to pulmonary vasoconstriction and ventilation perfusion mismatch can trigger PPHN. The main one of the main causes MAS, that is meconium aspiration syndrome. depending on the concentration of meconium within the respiratory tract. PPHN is the newborn is leading cause of the death. So as I told in pathophysiology, all the conditions MAS which finally leads to PPHN. Next, we'll see with clinical features of MAS. So history. When you collect the history, it is not about collecting history during the delivery time, or you will see about the how is the amniotic fluid. The infant with MAS must have an history of meconium stain amniotic fluid. So without an amniotic fluid being stained with the meconium, you can't expect an MAS delivery. So immediately when the you see the amniotic fluid is stained, then this 100% assured history of meconium aspiration syndrome. So it is not necessary that all the meconium has stained amniotic fluid, the meconium should be aspirated. So often are term and the post-term. IUGR, intrauterine growth retardation. Many are depressed at birth. So physical examination with features, how do you find out that baby is stained or maybe has aspirated the meconium? Evidence of post-maturity, peeling of skin, long fingernails, and reduced vernix. So these are the features of the postterm. So if you're expected to postterm, you have to be very conscious that you have to check the amniotic fluid whether it is stained with meconium. Vernix, umbilical cord nails may be meconium stained depending how long the infant has been exposed in utero. So immediately, maybe before the intrapartal period, the baby has passed meconium, there is a less amount of chance the baby maybe has aspirated the meconium. So you have to see so where the baby has been stained, the part which has been stained, it tells you how long the meconium has been, how long the baby has passed the meconium. If the nail is stained, generally after 6 hours, vernix after 12 to 14 hours, umbilical cord staining thick, it is 15 hours, thin, it is less than 1 hour. Respiratory distress with marked tachypnea and cyanosis. The child may have respiratory distress with marked tachypnea and cyanosis. Use of accessory muscles of respiration. That is, the baby may have accessory using the intracostal respiration. That is, in drawing of the respiration, maybe have grunting, nasal flaring using the accessory muscles. Chest appears barrel shaped with increased anterior posterior diameter due to the overinflation. I told the air gets trapped inside and get inflamed, and there is a appears of barrel chest with increased anterior posterior diameter. So on auscultation, there is a rhonchi immediately after birth. Next, a sign of cerebral irritation from the cerebral edema or hypoxia, jitteriness, and seizure. The child may have jitteriness, seizure, or due to the reduced level of oxygen in the blood. Some patients are asymptomatic at birth and develop worsening signs. So when you see a baby with meconium aspiration fluid, if it is not, the baby is vigorous, it is a safer side to go with suctioning and taking an X-ray, because later the child may get worsening signs of respiratory distress as meconium moves from larger airway to the lower tracheobronchial tree. Meconium found below the vocal cord defines MAS. So, as I told in pulmonary hypertension, see, this is a normal heart. So pulmonary arteries, it is not constricted here. Whereas you can see the constriction of pulmonary arteries, which causes pulmonary hypertension, PPHN. And enlarged right ventricle. So shunting, because of the shunting, there is a enlarged right ventricle. And this is the ventilation and perfusion mismatch. So uniform ventilation in the alveolus. So when there is a right to left shunt, so mixed venous blood comes in, and there is a non-uniform perfusion. So there is a oxygenated blood, arterial blood, hypoxemia, arterial hypoxemia. There is a mixing of deoxygenated blood in the supply. Next, we'll go on with differential diagnosis. So differential diagnoses are perinatal asphyxia, bacterial pneumonia, respiratory distress syndrome, TTN, that is transient tachypnea of newborn, congenital heart disease. What are the lab investigations? Arterial blood gas, that is, you see the ventricular, that is ventilator mismatch, metabolic acidosis, hypoxia, hypercarbemia. Next is ABG. ABG in the arterial blood gas, you repeat every 2 hours. And chest radiography. Hyperinflated lungs and flattened diaphragm, that is bilateral diffuse grossly irregular patchy infiltrates because of the meconium get infiltrated there in the lungs, pneumothorax, pneumonia mediastinum, small peripheral effusion, no air bronchogram, small effusion, pleural effusion, and no air bronchograms are seen in the chest radiograph. So we can see that air trapping and hyper expansion due to airway obstruction, diffuse symmetrical patches, infiltrates, and areas of consolidation and hyperinflation of the lungs, and aclitasis. So where collapse of the alveoli, aclitasis will be seen in the. So management, how are you going to prevent and how you're going to treat the meconium aspiration syndrome? So usually prevention is better than cure, and when you expect when you not delay the delivery of a post-term baby. So prevention of MAS. So aggressive management of abnormal fetal heart rate monitoring. So during the intrapartum period of pregnancy, before delivery, the aggressive management of abnormal fetal heart rate. You have to continuously monitor the fetal heart rate when the mother is on delivery table. So reduction in the postpartum delivery decreases the incidence of MAS. So you don't postpone, you wait till you induce the labor after 41 weeks of labor, not delaying more than 42 weeks. Next is treatment of MAS. Management is primarily supportive treatment. So maintenance of optimal thermal environment. So it is very important to make the baby warm, minimal handling, adequate oxygenation, optimal blood pressure, and correction of acidosis, hypoglycemia, other metabolic disorders in management of treatment. So we saw the management. So management is prenatal. What are the management you do in prenatal? That is identification of high risk pregnancy. When you anticipate a high risk pregnancy, so it should be ready to manage the baby with meconium aspiration syndrome. And recognition of predisposing maternal factor. I told as risk factors as maternal hypertension, maternal diabetic mellitus, eclampsia and preeclampsia. So all these things we have to consider in delivering a baby. Post-date pregnancy, induction as early as possible as 41 weeks. So monitoring, careful observation and fetal monitoring during labor. So when mother is in the labor table, you should have a continuous fetal monitoring of heart rate. So that the baby doesn't go into the stress and pass meconium. Corrective measures should be undertaken in identifies compromised fetus. Compromised fetus is if we find the baby umbilical cord around the neck, or the baby is an IUGR, you have to consider all this. Next is amino infusion. Amino infusion is includes in the management. It like now researches are still going on. So whether it is beneficial or not, amino infusion is infusing intrapatally. You are infusing the isotonic solution into the in utero, in utero, so that you make the meconium into the lighter components, like you break down the meconium, so there is a prevention of less chance of aspirating thick meconiums. So it is risk factors are includes, like there is risk factor regarding the infection. Relieved umbilical cord compression during a labor, reducing occurrence of variable fetal heart rate declaration. Next is efficiency not well demonstration. It is not really demonstrated regarding the efficiency. So always a delivery room is management is always, we cannot anticipate anything, anticipate the worst and be prepared. So we may not know if the meconium is stained only during the delivery time. The meconium, when the show coming out and the meconium is coming out, we'll come to see that it is stained, or the baby is, how the baby is vigorous or non-vigorous. So anything we should be prepared. So you should anticipate the worst and be prepared about the delivery. Next, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics and Indian Academy of Pediatrics, the NRP guidelines, previously it was different and now it has been changed. If the baby is not vigorous and vigorous, so during the resuscitation of MAS, you have to consider two factors, whether the baby is vigorous or non-vigorous. Previously it was like, if the meconium aspiration, meconium stained liquor, that is MSAF, if the meconium, the amniotic fluid is stained by meconium, irrespective the baby is vigorous or non-vigorous, you intubate and suction the trachea. But now the NRP guidelines has been changed. If the baby is not vigorous, what are the things you have to do? There is a certain things. Direct suctioning immediately after delivery. So you don't go with stimulating the baby, you don't make the baby cry. There should not be any stimulation, or you should not go for positive pressure ventilation before suctioning. So directly you're going to suction the immediately after delivery. Suction not longer than 5 seconds. So if the baby goes for bradycardia, then you need to give PPV, that is post ventilation. If no meconium retrieved, do not repeat intubation and suction. So if there is no meconium, so you're not, it is not a sign that you are again, you have to reintubate and suction the baby. If the meconium is retrieved and no bradycardia present, reintubate and suction. If meconium is retrieved and no bradycardia present, you can again go for intubating and suctioning, because it's still more, there may be a meconium may be present. If the heart rate is low, administer positive pressure ventilation and consider suctioning again later. So when you have to consider whether if the baby is going for bradycardia, before you go for suctioning, it is the meconium may go into the larger respiratory tract. If the baby is vigorous in the sense the baby's heart rate is above 100, the baby's muscle tone is good, and the baby is there is no sign of good respiratory effort, the baby is considered to be the vigorous baby. So clear the secretion meconium from the mouth and nose with bulb, syringe, or larger bore suction. A suction catheter, you have to first, just as a you're giving general suctioning for all the babies, you have to give, but consider, yeah, it is a meconium as stained liquor, then the baby is vigorous, go for suctioning with bulb suction is enough, or you can use the bore suction, that is suction catheter. So management of newborn with MAS. So general management, what are the things you do? So as I told, if the baby is vigorous, what you have to do. And if it is a baby is not vigorous, so if it is not baby is not vigorous, that is baby is not crying, baby's heart rate is below 100, and baby is lethargic, and you go for direct suctioning immediately after delivery, and suction for no longer than 5 seconds. And if it is vigorous, it is a sign that baby is good. That is, respiration is more than heart rate is more than 100, and baby is having good muscle tone, and baby is good respiratory effort. It is considered as vigorous baby. So, what are the general management? Maintain a neutral thermal environment. So, always consider keeping the delivery room warm and keeping the warmer, pre-warm the warmer. Minimal handling protocol to avoid agitation. So minimal handling is very necessary, and maintain adequate, because as we told, there is a cerebral irritation and chance of, so we have to minimally handle protocol should be to prevent the agitation. Maintain adequate BP perfusion. So you have to immediately go on with saturation checking and BP. Pre-ductal and post-ductal saturation should be checked in these babies. Correct any abnormalities and sedate the baby. Because sedation is very important, you don't keep the baby calm and quiet to prevent agitations caused. Respiratory management. Pulmonary toilet, that is suctioning lavage with surfactant, or pulmonary cleaning from ET tube, that is endotracheal intubation, plus chest therapy every 30 minutes to 1 hour. It is not usually recommended, only if the baby's condition permits. Arterial blood gas level to assess the infant ventilatory compromise. Frequent blood taking, that is by umbilical artery catheter or umbilical vein catheter. So frequent blood taking by direct IV lines, it again causes agitation to the baby. So this is the easy way you use an umbilical artery catheter or umbilical vein catheter. Next is oxygen monitor. So severity of infant respiration status and to prevent hypoxia. Compare preductal and postductal saturation. So preductal saturation is usually checked in the right hand. It is called preductal, and postductal are the other parts, that is left hand, left leg, and right leg. So I identifies the infant. So I told it is MAs babies are most commonly affected with pulmonary hypertension. So it is early management. You check the preductal and postductal saturation. Compare pre and postductal saturation. So there is chances that preductal saturation may be reduced in the child with MAS usually. Identifies infant with the right to left ductal shunting secondary to MAS associated pulmonary hypertension. Next is antibiotic coverage. Start on with broad spectrum antibiotic. So baby, anyway, the infant, the newborn is going to undergo lots of even though the meconium is sterile, because of it contains so much of bile and products, it goes and infect the lungs and pneumonitis, and baby is going to have a lot of intravenous therapies, the baby may get infection. So it is better to start prophylactic antibiotic as well as a broad spectrum antibiotic. Next is supplement oxygenation to prevent episodes of alveolar hypoxia leading to hypoxic pulmonary vasoconstriction and PPHN. So maintain arterial oxygen tension 80 to 90 mmHg. Next is CPAP. CPAP is continuous positive aspiration pressure. To improve the oxygenation, if the FiO2 exceed 40 to 50%, then you will consider going for mechanical ventilation. In MAs with inventing respiratory failure with hypercapnia and persistent hypoxia. Volume targeted ventilation decreased lung over distension. So use of relatively short inspiratory time limit potential air trapping. So requires high pressure and faster rate. So surfactant, how the surfactant, as I told, the functions of surfactant, how the surfactant is protecting the lungs and it is causing less surface tension. So how the surfactant is from externally it is used for the treatment of MAS. RCT shows the infant with severe MAS who require mechanical ventilation and findings of the pathology regarding the benefits from regular surfactant therapy. The surfactant therapy in MAS is showing promising result in decreasing the number of infants requiring extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It is in ventilation ECMO. Mechanical ventilation is an ECMO, reduce the reduction of pneumothorax. So when you expect a baby with PPHN, you go with surfactant therapy in MA is showing promising result with decrease in the number of infant require ECMO and reduction of pneumothorax. Usually requires multiple doses at an interval of 6 hours. So usually improvement is observed with after 2 to third dose. So optimal strategy not yet been defined. So lung lavage, so like with diluted surfactant is externally been given to the baby through endotracheal intubation to prevent the surfactant insufficiency. So sometimes it may be a overload to the baby also. Still there is a research regarding this new treatment with potential beneficial resulting depending upon the how early it is administered in newborn with MAS. This treatment shows promises as it has significant effect on air leaks, pneumothorax, the need for ECMO and death. It can be prevented. Early intervention and using it on newborn with mild MAS is more effective. So you can't expect how effective it is when the meconium is severely being aspirated with the severe condition of meconium aspiration syndrome, but it is more effective with mild MAS. However, there are risks as large volume of fluid installation to the lungs of a newborn can be dangerous, particularly in case of severe MAS. When the baby is having pulmonary hypertension, each fluid we are going to give is very important because you don't overload. Even the surfactant is in fluid which is going to be from externally you are going to installation into the baby. So it may there is dangerous, and consider the baby's condition and go on with that, as it can exacerbate hypoxia and lead to mortality. Next is inhaled nitric oxide. So MAS with pulmonary hypertension, selective pulmonary vasodilation, activate gluconide silicate and increase cyclic that is will later deal with the GMP and acting directly on vascular smooth muscles. Decreased need of ECMO but no difference in the mortality. Pre-treatment with surfactant improves in the delivery of inhaled nitric oxide to the alveoli. Next is glucocorticosteroids. That is glucocorticoids. So glucocorticoids have a strong inflammatory activity and works to reduce the migration and activation of neutrophils, eosinophils, and mononuclease and other cells. So glucocorticoids reduce the migration of neutrophils into the lung ergo and decrease their adherence of the endothelium. Thus, this is a reduction in the action of mediator released from the C cells and therefore a reduced inflammatory response. So what are the adjuvant therapies they are used? The infant with MAS should be monitored using non-invasive monitors. That is, continuous monitoring of invasive monitor of BP, pulse oximetry, transcutaneous O2 and CO2 methods, sedation and analgesia. That is to keep them not too elevating the baby, not giving too much pain. It causes even the central pressure to the baby to elevate pain and discomforts that may lead to hypoxia, right to left shunting. You give morphine or fentanyl as a sedation to optimize gas exchange, avoid asynchrony, reflex catecholamines, release and aggravation of pulmonary vascular resistance.
So the baby born through MSAF, that is meconium stained aspiration fluid, meconium stained amniotic fluid, sorry, risk factor plus depressed at birth, tachypnea in the delivery room. So considering this, if it is no, and yes, if it is no, if the baby is risk factor, is not depressed at birth, doesn't have any tachypnea, then you be with a routine care and no antibiotics. So risk factors is chronioamnionitis, prolonged rupture of membrane, oligohydromias, fetal heart rate abnormalities, post mature baby. Depressed at birth is apical arterial pH is less than 7.2 and BA is less than or minus 12. So mild MAS, moderate MAS, and severe MAS. So mild MAS is oxygen for less than more than 40% oxygen for 48 hours. We can give less, 40% less of 40% of oxygen for 48 hours. Monitor blood gas and SpO2, HbC, CRP, blood culture, nutritional support, antibiotics only if it is risk factor present. So if there is any risk factor present, you have been consider hospitalization, then you go on with antibiotics. So moderate MAS, if the level of oxygen is more than 40, consider giving a CPAP, monitor ABG, dual O2 saturation, FBC, and go at CRP, routine and infection checking, blood culture, IV fluids, antibiotic, ventilator support if the oxygen required is more than 60%. Severe MAs need for assisted ventilation, that is, if in the case of severe MAH, the chance of PPHN is more. So monitor the ABG, that is, you have to monitor intravenously, intravenously. The BP monitoring should be done continuously. O2 saturation, CRP, CBC, blood culture, cardio, echo, workout for sepsis, start antibiotic, nutritional support, inhaled NO for PPHN. So these moderate and MAS and severe MAS needs a tertiary care, that is level 3 NICU care. So how is the prognosis? Complications are common and associated with significant mortality. In patients with surviving due to severe MAS, BPD, CLD may result from prolonged ventilation. So neurodevelopmental sequence include GD, CP, so cerebral palsy may be seen, and autism long-term follow-up should be there. So there is research still going on, and research is being focused on the development both successful method preventing MAS as well as effective treatment. For example, investigations are made in efficiency of anti-inflammatory agents. How about the surfactant displacement therapy? Is it as it is dangerous? Whether there is an option for replacing the surfactant therapy, and more research need to be conducted on pharmacological properties. For example, glucocorticoids, including dosage, administration, timing, any drug interaction. Additional is still research being conducted on whether the intubation and suctioning of meconium is newborn with MA is beneficial. So it depends upon the doctor. Even guidelines, irrespectively, if it the stain, they go for endotracheal intubation. Now again, there is a intubation suctioning of newborn with MA is beneficial or it is going to cause harmful. A simple, redundant and outdated treatment. In general, there is no